Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into a style that's all about natural beauty and simplicity. Rustic design.
Rustic design. It really does capture a certain warmth and authenticity, doesn't it?
It does. I think a lot of our listeners are curious about how to bring that rustic charm into their own homes. We've got a great essay on rustic design principles to guide us today.
Excellent. That'll be a great resource for us.
When I think of rustic design, I immediately picture a cozy cabin nestled in the woods, the scent of pine in the air, warm, inviting spaces filled with wood and stone.
That's a perfect image to start with. Rustic design is all about embracing the beauty of natural materials and creating spaces that feel grounded and connected to nature.
So it's not just about throwing a few logs on the wall and calling it a day.
Definitely not. There's a real philosophy behind rustic design. It's about appreciating the imperfections, the history, and the story that each material tells.
That makes sense. I've always been drawn to the warmth of wood, but I never thought about it in terms of the specific types of wood and what they bring to a space.
Exactly. And wood is just the beginning. Think about stone, clay, even metals like wrought iron and copper. They all play a key role in creating that rustic aesthetic.
Okay, so we've got wood, stone, metal. What about the colors? Is it all browns and greens?
Well, those earthy tones are definitely foundational. Think warm browns, deep greens, maybe even some pops of muted reds and blues. But the key is to create a sense of harmony, a balanced palette that feels calming and cohesive.
Got it. So it's not just about mimicking nature, but about capturing its essence in a way that feels balanced and livable.
You getting it?
Now I have to ask about texture. Everything can't be smooth and polished in rustic design, can it?
You're catching on fast. Texture is absolutely crucial. Think rough-hewn wood beams, natural stone with its uneven surfaces. Even weathered metals can add a lot of character.
Ah, so it's about those tactile elements that invite you to touch and feel the materials, creating a multi-sensory experience.
Exactly. And we have a term for this aged, authentic look. Patina.
Patina. I've heard that term, but I never really understood it. It sounds so much more intriguing than just saying something is old or worn out.
It is. It's about appreciating the marks of time, the stories that those imperfections tell. It ties in beautifully with the Japanese philosophy of wabi-sabi, which embraces the beauty of impermanence and imperfection.
Wow, I never thought about that connection before.
Mhm.
Okay, so we've got the materials, the colors, the textures. What about the furniture itself?
Well, rustic furniture is all about sturdiness and functionality. Think handcrafted pieces made from solid wood, often with simple, clean lines.
I'm picturing those big, chunky pieces that are built to last, like a large farmhouse table where everyone gathers for meals.
Exactly. But it's not all about being heavy and imposing. Comfort is also a key element. Imagine sinking into a plush armchair by the fireplace, wrapped in a cozy, hand-knitted throw.
Okay, you had me at armchair. Now, I have a feeling rustic design is all about those one-of-a-kind pieces, too. The vintage and reclaimed finds that you just can't get anywhere else.
You're right. Those unique pieces add so much history and personality to a space. An antique trunk used as a coffee table, or a set of vintage barn doors repurposed as a sliding room divider.
It's like each piece has its own story to tell. This is what really excites me about rustic design. It's not about buying a matching furniture set or following trends. It's about curating a space that feels personal and tells a story.
You've hit the nail on the head. And speaking of creating a mood, let's talk about lighting.
Ooh, lighting is so important. I bet rustic lighting is all about creating a warm and inviting ambiance, right?
Absolutely. Think soft pools of light from lanterns, the flickering glow of candles, maybe a rustic chandelier with wrought iron details to add some drama.
It's about creating a sense of intimacy and warmth. I'm also realizing that a lot of what I love about rustic design is that connection to nature.
That's a great observation. It's not just about the natural materials we use, but also about blurring the lines between indoors and out.
It's like bringing the outdoors in.
Exactly. Think about large windows that frame views of the surrounding landscape, or using indoor plants to add life and freshness to a space.
It's all about making nature a part of your home rather than trying to shut it out.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
I'm really starting to appreciate the depth and thoughtfulness behind rustic design. It's not just about aesthetics, it's about a whole way of living and experiencing a space.
I agree.
But I think it's time to get real for a moment. Rustic design isn't perfect for everyone, right? There have to be some downsides too.
You're absolutely right. There are definitely some pros and cons to consider.
Okay, well, let's dive into those then. Let's explore the ups and downs of going rustic.
Sounds good to me. Let's start with the positive side, shall we?
Let's hear it. What are some of the biggest pros of rustic design?
Well, one of the most appealing things about rustic design is that warm and inviting atmosphere that we've been talking about.
It's true. There's just something about those natural materials and colors that make you feel instantly at ease. But is it all a bit brown? Can it get a little monotonous?
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
You have to be mindful of the color palette. But the beauty of rustic design is that it's highly adaptable.
So you can add your own personal touches and pops of color without sacrificing the overall aesthetic.
Absolutely. Textiles, artwork, accessories, these are all great ways to inject some personality and
Hmm.
create a space that feels uniquely yours.
I like that. And speaking of personal touches, are there different interpretations of rustic design depending on where you live? Like, is there a southwestern rustic versus a northeastern rustic?
There are. It's fascinating how regional influences can shape rustic design. Think about a southwestern adobe home with its earthy tones and hand-hewn beams compared to a rustic New England farmhouse with its painted wood paneling and cozy fireplaces.
Both rustic, but with their own unique character. I love that.
It's amazing, isn't it? And that ties into another great advantage of rustic design, its timeless appeal.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Well, rustic design isn't about chasing trends. It's about creating a space that feels enduring and authentic, a style that has stood the test of time and will continue to be relevant for years to come.
It's about those enduring qualities: warmth, simplicity, connection to nature.
Exactly.
All this talk about natural materials and craftsmanship has me wondering about the cost. Those gorgeous reclaimed wood beams, the hand hewn stone. It can't be cheap, can it?
That's a great point, and we'll definitely explore those costs in more detail later.
Okay, good. I'm all ears for that conversation.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty of budgets, let's talk about another major advantage of rustic design, its durability.
Durability. You mean those big, chunky furniture pieces can actually withstand real life?
They can. Think about the materials: wood, stone, metal. They're built to last and can handle wear and tear, which is perfect for homes with families and active lifestyles.
Now that's practical. I love that it's not just about looking good, it's about creating a space that can handle everyday life. And I bet rustic design is pretty eco-friendly too, isn't it?
It certainly can be. The use of reclaimed wood and other sustainable materials minimizes environmental impact. And because the focus is on quality craftsmanship, pieces are built to last, which reduces the need for frequent replacements.
That's fantastic. I love the idea of creating a beautiful space that's also mindful of the planet.
Hmm.
Okay, last question before we move on. What about personalization? Is there room for that in rustic design?
Absolutely. Rustic design is all about incorporating personal items and handcrafted pieces that reflect your unique style and tell your story.
So it's not about buying a prepackaged rustic look, it's about making it your own.
You got it.
Okay, but now I think we really need to talk about the elephant in the room: the cost. You mentioned that those gorgeous natural materials can be expensive.
It's true. The initial cost of rustic design can be a bit higher.
All right, well, for those of us who aren't millionaires, is rustic design even attainable? How much are we really talking here?
Let's break down those costs in more detail in part two of our deep dives.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty and talk about the costs associated with rustic design. As we mentioned, materials can be a big factor.
I'm ready to talk numbers. Let's start with those gorgeous wood beams I keep picturing. What are we looking at price-wise?
Well, those exposed beams, especially if we're talking reclaimed wood from old barns or structures, those can run you hundreds, even thousands of dollars.
Whoa, okay. I guess it depends on the size and the type of wood.
Absolutely. The size, the condition, the species of wood, all of those factors play a role. And then you have to think about sourcing.
Sourcing, what do you mean?
Well, imagine you're looking for reclaimed barnwood. Finding a piece from a historic barn in your region might be more expensive than something shipped from across the country.
So the rarity and transportation costs all factor in.
Got it. What about flooring? I'm guessing those wide plank wood floors are a big ticket item too. Yeah, wide plank floors, especially if they're reclaimed, can definitely add to the budget. And then there's stone flooring, another classic rustic element.
Stone flooring. Okay, so now we're talking about wood, stone. It's all starting to add up. What about those reclaimed pieces we talked about earlier, like vintage doors or antique hardware? Are those budget busters?
It really depends. A simple vintage door from a salvage yard could be a steal, but a handcrafted antique door with intricate detailing, that could be a collector's item with a price tag to match.
So it's about knowing where to look and what to prioritize. Maybe splurging on a few key pieces and balancing it out with more affordable options.
Exactly. And remember, Labor costs can be significant too.
Oh, right. I didn't even think about that.
Rustic design often involves specialized skills, like working with reclaimed materials, custom carpentry, stonework. You might need a team of skilled craftspeople, and their expertise doesn't come cheap.
So it's not just about the cost of the materials themselves, but also the cost of the labor to put it all together.
Precisely. And then there's the ongoing maintenance to think about.
Maintenance. Right. You can't just forget about those materials once they're in your home.
And natural materials do require some TLC. Wood needs to be sealed and refinished. Stone might need resealing. Metal might need to be treated for rust. All things to consider.
Okay, I have to be honest. This is all starting to sound a bit intimidating for someone on a budget. Is rustic design only for those with deep pockets?
Not at all. There are definitely ways to create a rustic space on a budget.
Really? Tell me more about that. Give me some hope.
Well, remember when we talked about mixing and matching materials? You can splurge on that reclaimed wood mantle, but choose a more affordable option for the floors.
Right, right. So it's about prioritizing and being strategic.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of DIY. Building a simple farmhouse table or refinishing an old dresser can save you a ton of money.
I love that. It's about putting in a little sweat equity.
And don't forget about those amazing faux finishes we mentioned.
Oh, yeah, those paints that mimic the look of wood or stone.
Yeah.
Genius.
They can really give you that rustic look without the hefty price tag. And you can always scour flea markets and antique shops for unique and affordable finds.
It sounds like rustic design is almost a treasure hunt, which honestly makes it even more fun.
It definitely adds to the charm. Rustic design is all about embracing those imperfections, those unique pieces that tell a story.
We've talked about the costs, the materials, the practicalities, but now I'm curious about the people who are drawn to this style.
Yeah, who is rustic design really perfect for?
Okay, so we've talked about the nuts and bolts of rustic design, the materials, the costs, even some budget-friendly tips. But now I'm curious about those final touches, the things that really make a rustic space feel complete.
You're talking about the details that bring warmth and personality to a space. It's about layering those elements that make a home feel lived in and loved.
Okay, I'm all ears. What kind of details are we talking about?
Imagine cozy textiles, like a chunky knit throw draped over a leather armchair, or maybe a plush rug underfoot, something with a natural texture like jute or wool.
I love those natural textures. And what about window treatments?
Oh, yeah. Maybe some linen curtains in a soft, earthy hue, filtering the light just so.
Creating that perfect ambiance. But what about the walls? I'm picturing lots of wood, which I love, but can it be too much?
That's where artwork comes in. Rustic design often features pieces that reflect nature landscapes, botanical prints. Even a vintage map framed in reclaimed wood would look amazing.
Bringing the outdoors in, I like that.
Yeah.
What about decorative accents? What are some of your go-tos?
Well, rustic design is all about celebrating the beauty of natural materials. So think about woven baskets, pottery with organic shapes, maybe a cluster of antique bottles on a reclaimed wood shelf.
You're making me want to go antiquing this weekend. Those little details really do make a difference, and of course, we can't forget about plants.
Absolutely. Indoor plants are a must-have in any rustic space. They bring in that connection to nature and add a touch of life.
I'm a big plant person, so that definitely resonates with me. A big fiddle leaf fig would look stunning in a rustic clay pot, don't you think?
It totally would. Or you could create a charming display with trailing vines cascading from a reclaimed wood shelf.
I love that. It's more than just decorating. It's about creating a space that feels alive and connected to the natural world.
Exactly. And I'm noticing a theme here. A lot of those finishing touches we're talking about have a deeper meaning.
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. A hand-knitted throw from a loved one, a framed botanical print from a memorable trip, a collection of antique bottles passed down through generations. It's not just about filling a space. It's about surrounding yourself with things that have meaning.
It's about telling a story with your space.
Exactly. Rustic design is all about creating a space that feels authentic, inviting, and full of heart. It's about slowing down, appreciating the simple things, and finding beauty in the imperfect.
That really resonates with me. It's not about being flashy or trendy. It's about creating a home that nourishes your soul.
You nailed it. Yeah. And that's what makes rustic design so enduring and appealing. It speaks to a deeper part of us, that longing for connection, comfort, and a sense of belonging.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into rustic design, I want to leave you with one last thought. If you could design your dream rustic home, What one reclaimed element would you absolutely HEVE to include? Maybe it's a weathered barn door with its original hardware, a vintage fireplace mantle with intricate carvings, whatever it is, let it spark your imagination and inspire you to bring a touch of rustic charm into your own life. Until next time, happy designing.